Google, the tech giant we all know and love. From answering our weirdest questions at 3 a.m. to helping us navigate life, literally with Google Maps, it's hard to imagine a world without it. But here's the kicker. Google, the multi-billion-dollar empire, almost didn't survive. That's right, even the biggest names in history can stumble, big time. Welcome. This is the Roots to Riches channel, where the journey of success unfolds. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications so you never miss out on incredible stories about how the biggest companies in the world began, their toughest challenges, and the inspiring road they took to greatness. Plus, we'll be sharing life-changing tips along the way. Your support is key to growing this channel. Please share these stories with your friends, family, and anyone looking for inspiration. Thanks for being part of the journey. Today, we're going to dive into Google's greatest missteps, from their shocking mistakes to how they clawed their way back from the brink of collapse. And stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll not only know how Google survived, but walk away with lessons to overcome your own challenges, no matter how colossal they seem. Because if Google can survive failure, you can too. Ready? Let's go. Picture this. It's 1998. Two Stanford students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, build a search engine in a garage. They call it Backrub. Backrub? Can you imagine? Let me backrub that for you. Yeah, that's a hard no. Thankfully, they rebranded to Google, and within a few years, their search engine became a game changer. But as Google soared to fame, it made some decisions that nearly cost the company everything. Let's talk about those. All right, let's take a trip back to 2009. Google had already conquered search engines, and they were on top of the world. They thought, what's next? Let's reinvent the way people communicate. Enter Google Wave, the so-called future of communication. Sounds fancy, right? But here's where things got. Nobody, and I mean nobody, understood what Google Wave actually was, not even Google's own team. They marketed it as a tool that combined email, instant messaging, real-time collaboration, and file sharing all in one. Sounds awesome on paper, but here's the kicker. Even with all those features, it was basically impossible to figure out how to use it. Picture this. You open Google Wave, and it's like someone dumped email, chat, and social media into a blender, then forgot to put the lid on. It was chaos. One tech journalist called it email on steroids, and another said it felt like a homework assignment for communication. Not exactly rave reviews. And let's be honest, the last thing anyone wants when they're trying to send a quick message is to feel like they're taking a crash course in software engineering. Google had essentially built a tool so complex, it required a manual just to say hi. But here's the real problem. Google didn't just launch a confusing product. They hyped it up like it was going to revolutionize the internet. The marketing was intense. People thought it was going to replace email forever, and when it didn't live up to the promise, oh boy, the backlash was brutal. Despite sinking millions of dollars into development, Google Wave flopped. It was abandoned less than a year later. A year. That's how quickly Google realized they'd made a colossal mistake. Can you imagine spending that kind of money just to throw it all away? But here's the thing. We've all had our Google Wave moments, haven't we? Maybe it was a project at work that totally bombed or a big idea you poured your heart into, only to watch it fall apart. It sucks, right? But hey, at least your failure didn't cost millions of dollars and become a meme in the tech world. And believe it or not, Google learned from this. They took the technology behind Wave, like its real-time collaboration features, and repurposed it for other tools, like Google Docs. So while Wave itself flopped, its DNA is still alive and thriving today. Failure can be messy, but sometimes it's the starting point for something even better. So, what's the lesson here? Sometimes even the biggest companies make huge mistakes, but the key is what you do next. Google didn't let Wave define them. They took the lessons and moved forward, and so can you. Ever worked on a project at work that nobody understood, but you poured your soul into it anyway? Yeah, that was Google Wave. Secondly, there was Google Glass, the smart glasses nobody wanted. Google Glass, the $1,500 pair of futuristic glasses that had tech enthusiasts drooling and the rest of us wondering if we'd accidentally stumbled into a sci-fi movie. Remember the hype? Google marketed it as the next big thing, the gadget that would redefine the way we interact with the world. But here's the thing. The excitement lasted about 5 minutes. Why? Well, for starters, these glasses were, let's say, an acquired taste. They were clunky, awkward, and made you look like you were auditioning for Star Trek, or worse, trying to join the Borg Collective. And then there were the privacy concerns. People didn't just dislike wearing them, they hated seeing other people wearing them. I mean, imagine sitting in a coffee shop and some stranger is staring at you through glasses that could be recording every move you make. Creepy, right? People called them glass holes for a reason. And let's not forget the fashion statement. Google said, futuristic and sleek. The public said, no thanks, I'll just look at my phone like a normal human being. It's bad when wearing a device makes you feel like you're in a bad sci-fi movie and a walking security threat at the same time. Google poured billions into this project, confident it would change the future. Instead, Google Glass became the punchline of every tech joke. Talk shows roasted it, memes flooded the internet, and sales were dismal. The idea of wearable tech sounded amazing, but the execution? Not so much. The glasses were overpriced, impractical, and ahead of their time, but not in a good way. But let's be real. Haven't we all had a moment where we thought we had the best idea ever, only to have it completely flop? Maybe it was a new recipe that ended in disaster, or that time you tried to DIY your home decor and ended up calling a professional instead. Google Glass was basically that, but on a billion-dollar scale. And here's the thing. Even though Glass failed spectacularly, it wasn't the end of the story. Google took the lessons they learned about design, usability, and timing, and channeled them into other successful products. Today, Glass has a niche market in industries like healthcare and manufacturing. So while it didn't become the everyday wearable they hoped for, it still found a purpose. So what can we take away from this? Even the most brilliant ideas can flop if they don't meet people's needs. But failure doesn't have to be final. Sometimes it's just a stepping stone to something better. Now, this one was big. In 2012, Google bought Motorola for a jaw-dropping $12.5 billion. The plan? To dominate the smartphone market. But it turns out, Google had no idea how to manage a hardware company. Motorola hemorrhaged money, and just 2 years later, Google sold it for, wait for it, $2.9 billion. That's a $10 billion loss. Let me ask you, have you ever made a decision so bad that it felt like setting money on fire? Now imagine doing that on a $10 billion scale. Quick pause. If you're enjoying this content, it would mean a lot if you shared this video or recommended our channel to a friend. Word of mouth is everything. It's because of awesome viewers like you that we keep growing. By the mid-2000s, Google was at a crossroads, teetering on the edge of a crisis. The company that had started as a scrappy search engine with big dreams was suddenly facing the kind of grim reality no tech giant ever wants to admit. Between a string of flopped projects, the relentless pressure of a growing competitive market, and their own internal struggles, things were spiraling out of control. Picture this: ambitious projects that promised the moon but never got off the ground. Millions of dollars sunk into products that didn't resonate with users. The infamous Google Answers was quietly shut down, a failed attempt to take on Yahoo Answers. Google Video? It barely stood a chance before YouTube came in and completely dominated the space. And let's not even get started on their countless social media attempts. All of these failures added up to one thing: money flying out the door faster than they could bring it in. The competition was heating up too. Microsoft was throwing everything it had into Bing, Amazon was growing its empire, and Apple was on the brink of revolutionizing mobile tech. Every day, Google's dominance felt less secure. And then there were the internal issues. Google was growing too fast for its own good. Teams weren't communicating properly, projects were overlapping, and leadership was scrambling to keep up. Their famous motto, "Don't be evil," was starting to feel like a distant echo as the company struggled to figure out its identity in this rapidly changing tech landscape. Rumors began swirling in Silicon Valley. Could Google, the darling of the early internet era, actually be headed for bankruptcy? For outsiders, it seemed impossible. But for insiders, the fear was very real. Imagine being one of Google's employees during that time. Morale was low, pressure was high, and the vision of what Google could be was clouded by the failures piling up. Every company loves to talk about innovation, but what happens when innovation keeps missing the mark? It was a make or break moment. Either Google had to find a way to turn things around, or they were going to crumble under the weight of their own ambition. The stakes couldn't have been higher, and the clock was ticking. And that's when the unthinkable happened. A series of bold decisions and unexpected alliances would soon pull Google back from the brink. But the journey back wasn't easy, and the lessons they learned along the way would shape the future of not just Google, but the tech industry as a whole. This is where the story takes a fascinating turn. By 2001, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the brilliant co-founders of Google, realized something important. Vision alone wasn't enough to keep their dream alive. Google was growing too fast, and their youthful enthusiasm wasn't quite enough to steer the ship through the choppy waters of rapid expansion and mounting challenges. They needed experience, someone who could take their bold ideas and turn them into a sustainable business. So, in a move that shocked many, Larry and Sergey decided to bring in Eric Schmidt, a seasoned CEO and industry veteran, to help stabilize the company. At first, it was an awkward match. Eric was older, more corporate, and far removed from the scrappy hoodie-wearing startup culture Larry and Sergey had cultivated. But that's exactly why they chose him. Eric wasted no time in making tough calls. His first priority? Focus. He quickly identified what Google did best, search and advertising, and made those the pillars of the company. That meant cutting the fat. Eric streamlined operations, ruthlessly shutting down wasteful projects that weren't delivering results. It wasn't always popular, but it was necessary. But where Schmidt really struck gold was in Google Ads. He didn't just double down on the advertising platform, he turned it into a finely tuned revenue machine. Under Eric's leadership, Google Ads evolved into a system so effective it revolutionized how businesses advertised online. Small businesses, big corporations, and everyone in between saw results, and Google raked in billions. Think about it. Every time you've seen a sponsored link at the top of your search results, that's the legacy of Eric Schmidt's laser-sharp focus. It wasn't glamorous, but it was wildly profitable. Soon, what had once been a company flirting with financial disaster became an unstoppable money-making machine. But it wasn't just about the money. Eric also brought discipline to Google's wild startup energy. He introduced structure, clear goals, and a sense of accountability, transforming Google from a promising young tech company into a global powerhouse. And here's the kicker. While many feared that bringing in a traditional CEO would stifle Google's innovative spirit, it actually did the opposite. Eric's leadership gave Larry and Sergey the freedom to dream even bigger, knowing the business side of things was in good hands. This partnership, the visionary founders and the seasoned CEO, was the perfect recipe. Eric Schmidt didn't just stabilize Google, he laid the foundation for its meteoric rise. What could have been a cautionary tale about youthful overreach turned into one of the greatest comeback stories in tech history. So the next time you click on a Google ad or search for anything online, remember this moment. The bold decision to bring in Eric Schmidt didn't just save Google, it set the stage for them to become the titan of technology they are today. Think about a time when you failed, but later, that failure gave you skills or insights you wouldn't have had otherwise. That's the essence of Google's story. Every failure became fuel for the next innovation. So, what can we learn from Google's stumbles? 1. Focus on your strengths. Google survived because they doubled down on what they were best at, search and advertising. What's your superpower? 2. Don't be afraid to pivot. When Google Wave flopped, they moved on. Failure isn't the end, it's a redirection. 3. Bring in help when needed. Larry and Sergey knew they needed help, so they hired Eric Schmidt. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And hey, if you don't have a billion-dollar CEO on speed dial, a supportive friend or mentor works just fine. Google didn't just survive its mistakes, it learned from them. Here's the truth, even giants like Google stumble. But what sets them apart is their ability to adapt, to learn, and to turn failure into fuel. And you can do the same. Whether you're facing a career setback, a failed relationship, or a personal challenge, remember, failure is not the end. It's an opportunity to grow, to pivot, and to come back stronger. Who knows? Your next Google Wave moment might just lead to your Google Ads success story. And when it does, you'll thank those stumbles for getting you there. So don't give up. Keep pushing, keep learning, and remember, even the biggest titans started in a garage. And hey, at least you didn't name your dream project Back Rub. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who might need a little motivation today. And let me know in the comments, what's one failure you've turned into fuel? I'd love to hear your story.